Over the last few months, cities all over the world have witnessed a pretty weird phenomenon: massive lines of people queuing up for one specific product. And we're not talking small lines, we're talking hundreds of people waiting for hours on end. In places like Hong Kong or Australia, people are literally camping out just to be the first to cop this. And no, it's not a new smartphone or a pair of hype sneakers. It's a toy with zero tech in it. You've probably seen them on your feed because their popularity just exploded. They're called Labubu art toys of a character that comes in different colors, sizes, and especially price points. Actually, a life-size one recently sold at an auction in China for like $150,000. It sounds like overkill, right? Why are these things so popular that people are actually throwing hands outside stores just to buy them? What's the secret? Well, behind these innocent-looking figures, there might be a whole web of psychological manipulation. If it hasn't hit you yet, it probably will soon. These toys have been around for almost 10 years, and they started getting traction in 2019 when the Chinese store Pop Mart began selling them. But they truly went viral when celebs started flexing them in their photos. Currently, the brand generates over $1 billion a year. Pop Mart has dropped over 300 different Labubu designs, but the best sellers are the ones that come in blind boxes. You know the drill. Identical boxes where you don't know what you're getting until you rip it open. It's the classic Gacha system. You have to buy a ton of them until you get the one you actually want. Since some designs have a lower drop rate, some are way more valuable than others. Japanese gachapon machines have done this for ages, and later video games turned loot boxes into one of the most controversial ways to make people spend money. This economy of surprise gives you a massive dopamine hit when you open the product. Plus, it's a perfect content opportunity for social media, which is basically free advertising for the brand. And we haven't even mentioned the resale market. If you pull a chase or special figure, you can supposedly flip it for a profit. But really, how different is this from walking into a casino? It's the exact same mechanism. The thrill isn't owning the product. The thrill comes from opening the box, pulling the lever on the slot machine, which makes you want to rinse and repeat until you're broke. That's why a lot of places are cracking down on this business model. China has recently established regulations on blind boxes, largely due to Labubu. For example, a minimum buying age of 8 years old, the secret figure must be drawn on the box along with the drop rates, and they can't use language that sounds like gambling or prizes. Pop Mart reacted by releasing more open box models and actually lowering the odds for some packs, making it a 1 in 12 chance for a secret figure rather than the traditional 1 in 72. However, a lot of people say China's regulations are actually a way to protect the brands themselves. As we all know, bubbles burst when you start seeing exaggerated prices and manic behavior in the market. We've seen this movie before. Remember Beanie Babies? They went from being worth millions to being practically trash. Or what about NFTs, those signed digital assets on the blockchain that people just saw as insanely overpriced monkey JPEGs? Yeah, those are worth almost nothing now. The big question is, when the golden era ends, will Labubu's crash and burn, landing on the list of disastrous economic bubbles? Or will they defy history and hold their value? Is it just a fleeting trend to join the club, or do people actually like them? Let me know what you think in the comments, and while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. It really helps the channel out. Imagine your dream is to open a coffee shop and be a barista. You save up for years to start your business, and you finally launch. Everything is going great, until one day, you see a sign just a few steps away, "New cafe opening soon." Someone is opening another spot right next to yours, and the owner is just as hyped as you are. Or even worse, it's a Starbucks. Your worst nightmare just came true. This looks like guaranteed bankruptcy. They're gonna steal all your customers. Should you go leave a 1-star review claiming there was a mouse in your caramel macchiato? No? Actually, this might be a good thing. There's a whole study on this that explains why rival stores or restaurants always seem to open right next to each other. It's called Hotelling's Law. An economist named Harold Hotelling formulated it using ice cream vendors on a beach. But let's visualize it with a McDonald's and a Burger King in a rectangular mall with entrances on both sides. McDonald's takes the spot on the far left and Burger King takes the far right. Everyone has their territory and captures customers entering from their respective sides without beefing. But since the eternal goal of capitalism is maximizing profits, Burger King starts suspecting they could get more foot traffic if they move closer to the middle. Immediately, this hurts McDonald's sales. So, they have to clap back, they pick up their store and move it closer to the center too. If Burger King did it once, nothing stops them from inching closer again, triggering another response until both are so close it gets awkward. And it's not just location, it's their color palettes, their promos, the prices, and their menus. They all start looking identical. There's a branch of math and economics called game theory that studies these decisions. In this case, the two restaurants have reached what's known as a Nash equilibrium. Neither can improve their position by changing strategy unless the other one changes theirs. So, everything stays stable and similar, like twins dressing alike and copying each other. This piece is only momentarily broken if a third competitor enters the chat. If they innovate offering better prices, a better vibe, or new food, the others have to make dynamic adjustments to stabilize. In other words, they have to copy them. In the end, it's actually practical for the consumer because you don't have to travel far to check out different options. You know they're all in one spot, in commercial clusters. For many businesses, it helps with prestige. If you put your new shop next to one with a solid reputation, people psychologically assign your shop similar value just because of proximity. Of course, this doesn't apply to every market. You practically never see two funeral homes next to each other, or two hospitals fighting for people walking by. Or niche businesses like model train stores, axe-throwing bars, or wax museums. You'll rarely see two of those side by side. On the flip side, you have brands that exaggerate this by putting two of their own stores next to each other, cannibalizing their own sales as a strategy. Like 7-Eleven, whose goal is to dominate a zone and prevent competitors from moving in. Or think about malls with two Starbucks, one near the entrance for the grab-and-go crowd and another inside for people who want to sit down. For some brands, saturation is the meta. So for your coffee shop, you're gonna have to compete against the neighbors by copying and beating their promos, prices, and quality. But that's not necessarily bad, it can be beneficial. Though, let's be real, if you would open an axe-throwing bar, you'd probably be doing better. But you had to have a coffee shop, didn't you? There are very specific, tiny zones in the world where, for some reason, an unusual amount of people live past 100 years old while staying active and sharp. These are the so-called blue zones. It's a concept that went super viral, you see it on news sites all the time. But looking past the clickbait, how real is this? Do these regions actually give you a buff over other humans? I'm gonna give you the reality check. The Blue Zones concept started with a study in Sardinia, Italy, where they found 13 centenarians per 100,000 people, a pretty high number. From there, Dan Buettner, an American author, investigated and found other similar regions: Okinawa in Japan, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Ikaria in Greece, and Loma Linda in California. Later, it came out that Loma Linda was added because an editor suggested Buettner should include a U.S. location so readers would feel more connected to the story. And when he wrote a book about it, Loma Linda stayed in. A bit arbitrary, but okay. What characterizes these places? They're usually small towns with low pollution and low stress. People live active lives close to nature, walk everywhere, and don't eat ultra-processed foods. Their diet is plant-based and low in red meat, similar to the Mediterranean diet. Plus, they have strong community ties and a focus on socializing. Basically the opposite of big city life. However, it's kind of sus to think that people living healthy lifestyles only exist in these specific spots. Something doesn't add up, you just have to dig a little deeper to see the truth. In Sardinia, formal birth records didn't really exist until the early 20th century. In Okinawa, they lost a ton of official documents during World Z, so a lot of data had to be reconstructed based on what people said their age was. Japan also had a massive scandal in the 2010s. The government tried to track down the country's centenarians, people over a 110, and they realized a lot of them were actually deceased. Their families just hadn't registered the death certificates, sometimes on purpose to keep collecting pension checks, or sometimes just out of negligence. This led to an investigation that uncovered irregularities in many registry offices, including Okinawa. By the way, recent stats show that the health and quality of life in Okinawa has actually dropped. Compared to other Japanese prefectures, it's fallen to near the bottom of the list. The case of Nicoya, Costa Rica is similar. Healthy lifestyle and great weather? Sure, but their civil registry system wasn't exactly top tier. The only thing that did increase was the concentration of tourists flocking there to find the secret to longevity. Does this debunk the whole Blue Zones concept? Not necessarily, we just shouldn't limit it to tiny zones or believe the people there are magical immortal wizards. The reality is, anyone can create their own Blue Zone just by tweaking their habits. And if the Blue Zones brand inspires people to live healthier, then it's not a bad thing. I skipped over a lot here, like genetics or the tech bros trying to solve death and reach longevity escape velocity, but that's a topic for another video. Let me know in the comments if you want me to cover that. Nintendo is about to pull off something that seemed impossible. In a few months, the Nintendo Switch is set to become the best-selling console of all time. The PlayStation 2 has held that record since 2010, when it surpassed the Game Boy. By the time it was discontinued, the PS2 hit 160 million units sold. The Switch is already at 152 million, and it did it faster. The PS2 was in production for 13 years, the Switch has been around for less than 8. This is wild considering Nintendo was coming out of a crisis. Their previous console, the Wii U, was a total flop. The general public was confused, they thought it was just an accessory for the Wii, the marketing was bad, the launch titles were weak, and it sold less than 14 million units. Back then, people were saying Nintendo should quit the console market and just become a game developer like Sega did. They had to do something revolutionary. It was all or nothing. So, they decided to merge their home console with their handhelds. It seems obvious now, but back then, it was a huge gamble, and it was basically like they predicted the future. Here's why. Even when Nintendo struggled with TV consoles, their handhelds were always the GOAT. The Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, and DS sold tons. So, they combined the best of both worlds, a portable that was also a home console. Single player but ready for multiplayer anywhere. Technically, it was the first time mobile processing power was strong enough to run complex games. But it wasn't just a gaming tablet. The Joy-Cons were the game changer, allowing two people to play with one set immediately. It aimed squarely at casual gamers. They even had HD rumble to simulate things like ice cubes in a glass, though they kind of forgot about that feature since barely any games use it to its full potential. The Switch started strong, beating the Wii U's lifetime sales in just a few months, but the key to its insane numbers came 3 years later. By some coincidence of fate, Animal Crossing New Horizons dropped right when the pandemic started. People knew they were going to be locked down at home and needed an escape. The game became a social phenomenon, leveraging something no competitor could match. Ideally, every person in the house needed their own Switch to have their own island character. So, households bought multiples. Another factor that rarely gets mentioned, the Switch was hacked very quickly, at least the first model was. Similar to the PS1 and PS2 modding scene, people could chip it and pirate games. That's not ideal for a company, especially Nintendo, but you can't deny it moved hardware units. So yeah, they basically had a crystal ball, everything went right. Now, other companies seem to have given up on handhelds, but not exactly. Sony and Microsoft are pivoting to cloud gaming, streaming games to your phone without losing graphical fidelity, as long as your internet is fast. But these services make their own consoles feel a bit obsolete. If you can stream a game directly to your TV, why buy the hardware? On the other hand, Valve has the Steam Deck, which is a solid option, but it's more premium. It's like holding a gaming PC in your hands. If they release a cheaper, more portable version, it could be a real competitor to the Switch 2. Speaking of which, the higher price of the upcoming Switch 2 will probably keep people buying the original Switch because it's more affordable. Bottom line, Nintendo can be savage about some things, but with the Switch, they made all the right moves. It's gonna be a long time before another console challenges that sales record. There is nothing more harmonious and elegant in nature than a big leafy tree. They're usually chill, hurting nobody, and serving as homes for happy little critters. But there's always a rotten apple in the family, the black sheep. There is a type of tree that is straight up evil, and it seems to enjoy it. It grows on tropical islands in the Indian and Pacific Oceans, specifically coral islands like the Maldives or Seychelles. It's called the Pisonia, or the birdcatcher tree. This tree can grow up to 20 meters high, and its main weapon is its sticky seeds. Usually, fruit exists to attract animals who eat it, swallow the seeds, and poop them out somewhere else. The animal gets a snack, the tree spreads its genes, everyone wins, but the Pisonia seeds are different. They are covered in a substance like glue or slime. When a seabird nests nearby, the seeds stick to its feathers. In theory, this helps spread them. The problem is, the seeds accumulate. When a bird gets too many seeds stuck to it, it becomes too heavy to fly. It falls to the ground and stays there forever, or becomes a snack for predators. As they say on TikTok, the tree indirectly unalived it. And if you weren't sure about this tree's villain arc, when a bird dies near the roots, it decomposes and becomes fertilizer, making the soil more fertile so the tree grows better. It's practically eating the birds. Natural selection turned this tree into a pseudo-carnivore, though technically it doesn't digest them directly like Venus flytraps do, but those prefer bugs. Recently, they found another species in Puerto Rico that does the same thing. And speaking of toxic plants, there's another one that would be the perfect bestie or rival for the birdcatcher tree. It's the vampire plant, or daughter vine. These creeping vines aren't even green because they don't have chlorophyll and don't do photosynthesis. They steal all their nutrients from the sap of other organisms. The vine wraps around other plants, pierces them, and sucks out their water and nutrients. It just lives there, attached to the host, spreading out. The wildest part, which scientists are studying, is that this vine can share viruses, RNA, and information, almost like an involuntary fusion. It can literally read or modify the genes of the host plant. It can even form a network between different species, sending chemical signals to warn them about herbivores. It's super weird and just reminds us that we know nothing about nature. It would be interesting to see what happens if a vampire plant met a birdcatcher tree. Would the vampire plant convince the tree to be nicer to the birds, or would it help it hunt better and split the loot?